Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh and salam sejahtera. My name is Nasraya binti Abdul Rahman. My matric number is 262097. We are from group 4 and we need to cover for chapter 12, 13 and 14. In this assignment, we need to discuss the marginalist school 5 major questions and contributions of William Stanley Jevons, Antoine Agustin Conant and Francis White Edwards in developing the ideas of that school. As for the introduction, the marginalist school began in the year of 1871 when Jevons and Major published their influential book on marginal utility theory. Antoine Conant and Jules Debut, which is several foreigners, predated them in the use of marginal analysis in economics, while Edwards and Clark, which is several second generations marginalists, expand their theories further. This school eventually become parts of neoclassical economics or contemporary microeconomics. Thus, in this assignment, it will discuss about 5 major questions and contributions of Antoine Conant, Jevons, and Edwards in developing the idea of that school.
Assalamualaikum, my name is Muhammad Faiz bin Muhammad Farid. My matrix number is 268081. So today I would like to talk about the historical background. Serious economic and social problems remain unsolved even 100 years after the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. So first is poverty was widespread, although productivity was increased dramatically. So second, the extremely uneven distribution of wealth and income created much dissatisfaction, even though the general standard of living was rising. Business fluctuation affected many people, which individuals could no longer depend on their own initiative and ability to overcome their condition. Farmers and farm labor had their difficulties and caused them to immigrate into the city to find work. So the long working hours, dangerous and unhealthy working condition, the dominant power of employer in bargaining with workers, rise of monopolistic power and insecurity, old age cause people to find solution beyond classical economic thinking. The trend of 19th century in Europe was to develop 3 approaches to overcome social problem. So first, to promote socialism. Second, to bolster trade unionism. And third, to demand government intervention in the economy, regulating the economy, eliminating abuse and redistributing income. So, however, the marginalists oppose all those three solutions, and they support the classical school laissez-faire. So the marginalists defend market allocation and distribution, deplore government intervention, denounce socialism, and sought to discourage labor unionism as either ineffective and pernicious. Marginalists believe that although the value of distribution theories of the classical economists were inaccurate, but their policy is suitable. There are 10 major tenets in the marginal school. So first is the focus on the margin. Second, the rational economic behavior. Third, microeconomic emphasis. Fourth, the use of the abstract deductive method. Fifth, the pure competition emphasis. Sixth, demand-oriented price theory. 7, emphasis on subjective utility. 8. Equilibrium approach. 9. Merge of land with capital goods. 10. Is the minimal government involvement. So, first, focus on the margin. Focus on the margin is focus its attention on the point of change where decisions are made, or in the other words, on the margin. So, the marginalist extended to all economic theory the marginal principle that David Ricardo, classical school, developed in his theory of rent. So, second is the rational economic behavior. The marginalists assume that people act rationally in balancing marginal benefit MB, marginal cost MC, pleasure and pain, and in balancing present against the future needs. So, they also assume that purposeful behavior is normal and typical, and that random abnormalities will cancel each other out. The approach employed by the marginalists had its root in the works of Jeremy Bentham, utilitarianism, in that they assume the dominant drive of human action is to seek utilities and avoid these utilities, negative utilities. So, number 3 is microeconomics emphasis. The individual person and firm take center stage in the marginalist drama. Instead of considering the aggregate economy or macroeconomics, the marginalists consider individual decision making, market condition for a single type of good, the output of specific firm, and so forth. So next is the use of abstract deductive method. The marginalists reject the historical method, which is German historical school, in favor of the abstract and deductive approach pioneered by David Ricardo, classical school. So Ricardo begins with basic premises, then use logic to deduct generalization. His tendency is to use restrictive assumption to bolster his argument. The method of partial equilibrium analysis, championed by many members of marginalist school, was useful for abstracting from the complexity of the real world in order to the better understanding it. So this ceteris paribus approach, allowing one variable at a time to change while holding all other variable temporarily constant, enable the investigator to dissect complex phenomenon one step at a time. The problem of the immensely complicated society with its countless variable was thereby simplified, penetrate in orderly and systematic manners. So, the number 5 is the pure competition emphasis. The marginalists normally base their analysis on the assumption of pure competition. In the world of small, individualistic, independent entrepreneur, numerous buyer, many sellers, homogeneous product, uniform prices, and no advertising. No person and firm has enough power to influence market price perceptibility. Individuals can adapt their own action to demand, supplies, and price through the interaction of thousands of people. Number 6 is demand-oriented price theory. So three types of school. So the first is classical economists. The classical economists emphasize supply only as the significant determinant of price. So the second is marginalist, emphasize demand as the significant determinant of price. So the neoclassical school emphasize both the supply and the demand as the significant determinant of price. So 7 is emphasis on subjective utilities. According to marginalists, demand depends on marginal utilities, which is a subjective psychological phenomenon. Marginal utilities is the additional utilities a person receive from consuming an additional unit of a particular good. Marginal utilities is the change of utility, total utility divided by the change in the quantity consumed of the good. So number 8 is equilibrium approach. The marginalists believe that economic forces generally tend towards equilibrium, a balancing of opposite forces. Whenever disturbance cause dislocations, new movement towards equilibrium occur. So number 9 is merger of land with capital goods. So the marginalists lump land and capital resources together in their analysis and spoke of interest, rent and profit as being the return to the property resources. This had its advantage analytically, and also combined the conclusion drawn by some that land rent is unearned income and an unnecessary payment in order to ensure the use of land. The marginalists generally count the reward to the landowner with interest theory. So number 10 is and last, minimal government involvement. The marginalists continue the classical school defense of minimal government involvement in the economy as the most desirable policy. In most cases, no interference with natural economic laws was in order if maximum social benefit were to be realized. So next we discuss about whom did the marginalists benefit or seek to benefit. So generally beneficial to all parties by providing a better understanding of how the free market system can allocate resources more efficiently and promote economic liberty rather than clarification by a classical school. So second, for specifically for the workers, so by showing that workers receive wages that are equal to their distribution, help counter the Martian call for revolution by the proletariat law of motion theory. So second is those who resist change benefit those who are interested in maintaining their status quo. So next is the employers, by opposing union and by attributing unemployment to wages that were artificially high and inflexible downward. So landowner defend landlord against attack based on Ricardian rent theory. So lastly, wealthy people by opposed to government intervention that might redistribute income.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. So my name is Muhammad Fizil bin Amizi. My metric number is 261702. So I will go for my part. So for the first part is about how was the Madinese school valid, useful or correct in its time. So for the first is about development of geometric diagrams and mathematical techniques. So in this first development of new and powerful tool of analysis, especially geometric diagrams and mathematical techniques. Second is economics become more exact social science. So next is about the importance of demand in determining prices. So for first is from this condition of demand were given their rightful importance as one set of determinants for prices of both final goods and factors of production. Classical economies emphasize only on supply, which is a cost of production, as the significant determinant of exchange value, which is a price. Then for the third is about the use of assumption in economics analysis. So from this, popularizing the concept of assumption in the economy, contrary to the classical school, we've neglected the assumptions in a study. So next is for the first slide is about partial equilibrium analysis. So it is useful for abstracting from the complexity of the world, and then it is allowing one variable at one time to change while holding all other variables temporarily constant, which is ceteris paribus. Then it was enabled the investigators to decide complex phenomena one step at one time. The problem of the immensely complicated society with its countless variables was thereby simplified and penetrated in an orderly and systematic manner. So for the finally from this part is about macroeconomy approach. So from this macroeconomics may overlook many problems by viewing the economics as a whole. For example, a certain group of people may become increasingly impoverished, although average real per capita income for the nation may be rising. So for the next part is which tenets of the Madinese school become lasting contributions. So for the first is about Madinese and neoclassical employment theory. So Keynes pointed to the elite fallacy of composition associated with Madinese and classical employment theory. If one firm were to cut wage, it could expand its market by selling more goods at lower prices. The decline in purchasing power among its own employees would not affect because they normally buy only a negligible portion of its output. However, if all firms were to cut wages, their market shrinking rather than expanding. So from the Keynesian view, that there are alternative means to reductions in nominal wage to achieve full employment. And according to Keynes, in periods of slack aggregate demand for goods and services, firms should respond to lower sales by reducing production and discharging or laying off workers, not by insisting on wage cuts. So that's from Madinese and neoclassical employment theory. Now we go to the second, the next school become lasting collaborations. So second is about peer competition. So from this assumption of peer competition is too restrictive to be useful as a competition decline after the 1870s. Now, this assumption become outdated as new events transmit or new economic theories develop, and that's all from pure competition. Okay, now we go to the third part. The third one is about marginalists fail to explain economic growth and business cycle. The school failed to explain economic growth, and its theory proved to be inadequate for slowly developing country. Business cycle analysis also were neglected in proving that supply rates is on demand, and therefore full employment is the rule. For the fourth is about a deductive method. The deductive method used by marginalists was static, timeless, and unsubstantiated with empirical evidence. Then it's challenged by inductive method by a German historical school. Now we go to the lasting contribution. So from this, despite the criticisms, many of the marginalist theories still can be found in contemporary textbooks on principle of economics and microeconomics. And among the contribution of the school, mathematical economics, the basic monopoly model and theorem of duopoly, the theory of diminishing marginal utility, the theory of rational consumer choice, the law of demand, the law of diminishing marginal returns, and others. Okay, so now I will go for the economist people, which is Anton Augustine Connaught. Okay, Anton Augustine Connaught was born at a grave in 1801 and died in Paris, France in 1877 in age of 75 years old. He was a French mathematician who published treatises and mathematics, philosophy, and economics. He also was the first economist to develop consist mathematical models of pure monopoly, duopoly, and pure competition, but his pioneering work was neglected until after his death, when James, Marshall, and Fisher continued his work. Connaught also developed the earliest complete model of what we now refer to the derived demand of resources. Connaught is considered to be a forerunner to the marginalist school because much of his analysis focused on the rates of change of total cost and revenue functions. His contributions in economic analysis is theory of pure monopoly, and second is about theory of duopoly. So we go to the theory of monopoly first. Connaught is the first economist to derive the provision that a firm can maximize its profit by setting a price at which marginal revenue, same with marginal cost, which is MR, same with MC. Suppose a man finds himself proprietor of mineral spring assumption total cost TC and MC is 0. Total profit will be maximized at the quantity of output where TR P times Q is greatest, where at this point MR equal to 0. In graph A, we can see that MR lies below the curve because lower price applied to all liter, not just the extra one sold. Each additional unit sold will add its own price to TR, but if extra unit had not been offered for sale, the price received on other liters would have been higher. The loss of this potential revenue must be subtracted from a gain in revenue through the sale of extra liter. The seller could charge 100 francs per liter. However, he would sell only 65 liters of mineral water, which is total revenue would be 6,500 francs, assuming TC equal to 0. Okay, so we go for the total revenue graph. So the monopolies would try and error until price settled at 60 francs. At 60 francs, buyer will purchase 200 liters of mineral water and total revenue will rise to 12,000 francs. This is the monopoly's maximum total revenue. At the monopoly's maximum, TR, MC, and MR is equal to 0, which is profit maximizing condition is fulfilled. At graph B, you can see any price below or above 60 francs will reduce the TR. Cornell extended his theory to the condition where MC are positive. According to him, the monopolies facing positive cost will maximize profits when total revenue minus total cost at the level output, where marginal revenue equal to marginal cost. So this rules applies in a situation where numerous competitors exist. So for the Cornell's theories in retrospect, for the first is about in a theory of a pure monopoly model. In this retrospect, economists has found a little fault with this model, which is that Cornell did not recognize the possibility of price discrimination, the charging of different prices to different customers based on a different elasticity of demand. This can occur in circumstances where the market can be segregated and where the buyers cannot resell the product. Cornell's theory of duopoly has been criticized for making unrealistic assumptions and for omitting many alternative solutions of the duopoly case. So that's all from me. Thank you.
A very good morning to my sir and my fellow friends. My name is Nisha Selvam and my matric number is 264012. So today I am going to present about the William Stanley Jeffers. William Stanley Jeffers was born in Liverpool, England at 1835 to 1882. And he also spent 5 years to earn enough to continue his study at England. Due to his failure in a political economy, he came out with a new idea, which is published several books on logic. And also finally he became a professor of logic. By his logic, he invented a logic machine and also exhibited before Royal Society 1870. Okay, he is one of the historian science, and finally he died by drowned while swimming at the age of 47. So now next move to the next slide. Okay, next is Jeffers on value theory. There are 4 types of theory. First is theory of diminishing marginal utility. Second is rational choice, the equilibrium marginal rules. Third is theory of exchange, and fourth is Jeffers on labor. Okay, first, theory of diminishing marginal utility. As we know that utility cannot be measured directly, either used with tools of hand. It can be estimated only by observing, which is by human behavior and preference. Jeffers rejected only attempt that compare the intensity of pressure and pains. In diminishing rate, if X consume more, then the utility will be increases. So there are 3 concepts with relationship between total utility and marginal utility. First of all, the total utility increase and the marginal utility will be give a positive. Next is, if the total utility give a maximum and the marginal utility will equals to the 0. Third is, total utility is decreases while the marginal utility will be give a negative value. Okay, next move to rational choice, the second theory of the Jeffrens. Okay, the equilibrium marginal rules. Jeffren employ is a notion of a finite utility to formalize a general theory of a rational choice. If the rational marginal utility, the X price is greater than the price of Y, and then the consumer will be buy more on X than Y. It can be said by simplicity, that is, if MUX over PX is greater than MUY over Y, and that is considered by the consumer will buy more on X. While if the MUX over PX is less than MUY over PY, and then the consumer will consider to buy a more on a good Y. Okay, next move to theory of third part, theory of exchange. Jeffren also is a principle of the utility of maximizing to explain about the gain of the exchange. Here have two types of item, which is corn and beef, to explain the theory of the exchange. So this is an assumption of the Jeffrens. There are two questions occur when comes to the theory of the exchange. First question is, how is it that exchange give benefit to each? First of all, A will only have beef. So once the theory of exchange happening between the two person, so A will obtaining corn, the benefit of a corn, while giving up beef. Well, we come to the B. B only have corn. So once he only have a corn. So once the theory of the exchange will happening between them, so B will be obtaining a benefit of beef and giving up of the corn. This is the theory of the exchange. Second question is, at what point will be the exchange will be keys? So from here we can be conclude that when the exchange value of the beef and the corn, which is MUC and MUB, will be keep equal and maximizing, it will be the exchange value will be point off at the case. Okay, number 4, Jeffrens on labor. The utility is determine the exchange value. Okay, first of all, cost of production will determine the supply, while supply will determine the final degree of the utility, where the final degree of utility will determine the value. These are the steps of the Jeffrens labor. Jeffren also refuting the labor theory of the value by arguing that labor cannot be regulated because them itself as unequal costs. And also labor consider itself that subjective and also psychological cause and painful exertion. So from here, to accomplish this, workers must compare the pain of the work and the pressure of the earning. Okay, finally comes to the graph. In the graph represent that MUE, which is represent that marginal utility of earning, while MDUW is represent that marginal disutility work. Okay, as we said that in the graph above line of OX, it is a measure the pressure of the utility. While for the disutility, we must see the below of the line OX in the graph. It is a measure the pain of work. Okay, comes to the point B and a C. the NDUW maybe can be said that pressure or pain. But the point C in the graph, it represents that the pain of the work will be increased more. Okay, we can see the letter of M in the graph. So M is represent that the optimum amount of work earned by workers by each days. So here we see that at the point of M is represent that marginal utility of earning is equal to marginal disutility of workers. That's all from me. Thank you. Now I pass to the next presenter.
Assalamualaikum. My name is Amira Shazana binti Azhari. My matric number is 261627. I will continue this presentation with Francis Y. Edward. He was born in Ireland, attended Trinity College in Dublin, and studied at Oxford University. He later became the Tuck Professor of Political Economy at Oxford, where he remained throughout his career. He was one of the founders of the Royal Economic Society, was editor of the Economics Journal for 35 years, served a term as president of the Statistical Society, and was a fellow of a British ceremony. His contributions to economics are found in his Mathematical Physics, written in 1881, and in numerous articles collected in 1925 under the title Papers Relating to Political Economy. One of Edward's contributions to modern economics was his popularization of the use of mathematics within the discipline. Of Edward's various contributions to the content of economic thought, three in particular stand out. First, he originated the idea of an indifferent curve. Second, one of the first economists to discuss the pricing behavior of oligopolies, and the last one is he elucidated the difference between the average and marginal product. Indifferent curve and exchange. In his Mathematical Physics, Edward introduced the notion of curve of indifference, which he said show the various combination of two items that will yield an equal level of utility to an individual. As we can see, this graph is used to analyze an isolated exchange between two sole processors of products, in this case Robinson Crusoe and his right hand man Friday. Friday has labor as 2, whereas Crusoe has money as 1. Friday of course desires some of Crusoe money, and Crusoe desire to have the use of some of Friday's labor. For example, all of the combinations of labor and money associated with point along curve 1 yield identical level of utility to Friday. Curve 2, however, yield greater total utility to Friday than curve 1, and curve 3 more than 2. This could be demonstrated by drawing a horizontal arrow through the curve and noting that its intersection with each successive curve denote a large amount of Crusoe money for a specific amount of Friday's labor. If we think in terms of a map, we can say that Friday will prefer to be on indifferent curve farther to the east. Curve 1 Roman, 2 Roman and 3 Roman represent Crusoe in different map. If we drew a vertical arrow through this curve, we will discover that those to the north yield higher level of total utility to Crusoe. Each successive curve in this direction implies that Crusoe can obtain a large amount of Friday's labor at that particular amount of Crusoe's money. By overlaying crucials in different maps on Friday's map, Edward obtained a contract curve which is the logit of tangency points of two sets of indifferent curves. He concluded that the price of Friday's labor in terms of crucial money is indeterminate, that it is subject to bargaining, but that it will lie somewhere along line ABC. Edward's answer is that at all points other than those on the line ABC, either Friday or Crusoe can add to his utility without lessening the utility gained by the other party. This can be seen by noting point D on Crusoe indifferent curve 1 and Friday's indifferent curve 1. Crusoe can attain curve 3 rather than 1 at A while still leaving Friday on indifferent curve 1. Or look at from Friday's perspective, Friday can achieve the higher utility associated with his indifferent curve 3 at C without reducing Crusoe utility. Crusoe remain on curve 1, hence the self-interest of the two traders will push them to the contract curve. Friday, of course, will prefer C on this curve because it will place him on indifferent curve 3, but Crusoe will prefer A because that will provide him more utility than at either point B or C. To repeat, the final contract between the two traders in this case is indeterminate. Any point on the contract curve is a possible point of equilibrium and the final outcome will occur through bargaining. Marginal versus average product. A final significant idea added by Edward was his distinction between marginal and average product. The underlying assumption here is that the production process entails only two inputs, the variable resource labor L and the fixed resource capital K. Graph A in the diagram shows a short-run production function, and graph B shows the marginal and average product of labor that correspond with the total product curve shown in graph A. Marginal product MP is the change in total product associated with a change in the labor input. It can be found by using calculus or simply by drawing a straight line such as MM tangent to the TP curve at any point and then determining the slope of the line. For example, note that the slope of MM drawn tangent to TP at y is 0, which is the value of the marginal product as shown at point y on MP in the lower graph. The other points on MP are found in similar fashion. Geometrically, it can be found by drawing a straight line from the origin to any point on the total product curve and then finding the slope of the line drawn. One such line OA is shown. Its slope TP/L is the average product on point X, associated with the labor input and total product represented by X on the total product curve. Notice that when total product is rising at an increasing rate, marginal product is rising is above the average product. This is because MP larger than AP. Average product is also rising. Whenever a number that is greater than the average is added to a total, the average must also rise. But once the total product rises at a decreasing rate, marginal product falls. That is, diminishing marginal return occur. Eventually, marginal product falls below the average product, thus pulling the average down. Okay, that's all from me, and I will pass this presentation to my friend to conclude this presentation. Thank you.
Okay, as for the conclusion, the marginalist school offers the socialist ideology and government interventions in the economy. Instead, they re-emphasize the use of laissez-faire system pioneered by the classical school. Generally, this school sought to advance the interests of all humankind through promoting a better understanding of how a market system efficiently allocates resources and promotes economic liberty. Although the marginalist school has its own weakness, many of the theories still can be found in contemporary textbooks on principle of economic and microeconomic. For example, theory of monopoly and duopoly by Conant, theory of value by Jevons, and indifference curve and exchange and difference between average and marginal product by Edwards. Marginal analysis was applied to the whole body of microeconomics. It showed progress in mathematizations of economics, and it's only give inputs to the new era of economic thinking, which is neoclassical economics, starting in 1890s, which produced a complete and consistent new microeconomic theory. So from that, we can conclude that the marginalist was only a transitory period between classical and neoclassical schools. So that's all from our group. Thank you so much.